distinctly what is the purpose of an animal, and how does that relate to us as human beings? You know, how does that affect our permission slip in some way, right? Okay, so if we go back and we start looking, you know, the one thing that we do know that every time that the Creator creates something, He creates it with a distinct purpose, right? So if you want to know the distinct purpose of human beings, by the way, since He created us in His image and likeness, His Zelim Elohim, it means that we can reflect Him, right? That's what we should strive to be. That's our purpose, is to reflect Him. And we have that ability because He gave it to us, right? And so the texts of the Torah and the prophets always talk about we should emulate Him in His actions. That doesn't mean we look like Him, right? No physical form. God's not physical. So we emulate Him in our actions.
Right, which is what He told Moses anyway.
Exactly.
You know?
And all the way through the prophets, you know. He's the one that exercises righteousness and justice and mercy. Guess what we should be doing? Same. But not our sense of righteousness and justice and mercy. His sense. And that's why it's so important that we understand that. Okay? So we go back to Genesis, and God begins to create certain things, right? And we come to day 2 of creation, right? And it says, and God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth on the earth. So God made man in His own image, Zelim, right? In the image of God created He them, male and female created He them, right? So all of a sudden now we have this being brought into existence that's able to really reflect, right? And that's our purpose, is to reflect His image, right? Not that we can be Him or look like Him, but to reflect His action and activities, okay? Now,
what day did you say that?
Oh, I'm sorry, that's 6th day. I said 2nd day, I'm sorry. Now, so that's our purpose, okay? So let's go back and look at the animal life. When the animals were actually brought into being, right? Now, He says, this is verse 24, Genesis 1. He says, and God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures after His kind, cattle and creeping things, and beasts of the earth after His kind, and it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth after His kind, and cattle after their kind, everything that creepeth on the earth after His kind. And what does He say? And God said, He saw that it was good. It was tov, right? What does it mean it was tov? Really good, right? Tov. He judged it to be good. Now, the qualifying thing after the making of all these animals, whether it was the fish or the fowl that came from the water, in the previous verses, by the way, and the animals, what was their purpose? The purpose was for them to what? So what is their purpose? You know, an animal's purpose. In other words, God is a purposeful creator, and He creates everything with purpose. So originally, animals were not to be the food source of a human being, right?
Right.
The plants and the fruit from certain trees. That was the original food source, okay? Now, all of a sudden, we get a new permission slip. But how do we get a permission slip when it might violate the purpose of the creation of an animal to begin with? Because the purpose of the creation of the animal was that it would go forth and multiply. So if we're going to take that animal's life prematurely, we're stopping it from doing what?
Exactly that.
We're stopping it from fulfilling the purpose of Hashem. On the other hand, let's look at it in the fact, why are we forbidden to eat the limb of a living animal? That's the prohibition, right? We cannot eat the limb of a living animal. The animal must be dead. Well, the only way that we can view that animal as food is when it is dead. Why? Because the purpose, the primary purpose of that animal is not a food source for us. The primary purpose for that animal was to be fruitful and multiply.
Yeah, that brings a lot of questions in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
brings in a lot.
For example, you've got a lot of businesses
Yes.
who thrive on seeing growing animals just for the sole purpose of food consumption. Yes. So, for me, the question would be, how we to view that.
Right. Well, the one I think the question that in our mind is, how do we view an animal that's being raised for food consumption? If we just look at that animal and view it simply as food for us,
we're robbing it of its purpose.
We're robbing it of its purpose. I think this question has kind of been passed around to several people, and we never really got a really good answer on it. I think that we could raise it as long as it's allowed to fulfill its purpose, right? And ultimately, we know it's going to wind up on somebody's food table. Mm-hmm. But we can't look at it as food, it seems, until the animal's dead, because it has a primary purpose just like we have a primary purpose.
I think that's why the old way of farming was the proper way of doing it.
Right.
Because it lived, it ran a course.
Yes.
It even multiplied several times before many times that animal became food for somebody's
table. So. I think maybe instead of looking at it as food, we might look at it in the future as food. But we can't look at it as food in a sense, because it has to fulfill its purpose just like we should be fulfilling our purpose. Our purpose is to reflect the actions of Hashem upon this world, right?
Well, I mean, just like we're supposed to value not only our own life, but the life of others.
Absolutely.
Well, it seems as though in the Torah, we should have that same respect for animals.
Absolutely.
And I think that's perhaps why there's a clause in there on at what point we can or cannot.
Right. Well, I call it the big conjunction, but, right? But, in other words, I've given you all this in the same manner as I've given you this previously, but there is a restriction. In other words, God gives permission, and it's a permission slip, just like He gave permission slip for man to eat the green herbs that are seed-bearing, just as He gave us all the fruit that have the seed within themselves. Now He gives us all the living creatures, but here's the permission slip, right? Yeah. That's permission. But the big but that follows that is, you cannot eat the flesh of an animal while it is still living. Okay? Now,
that's why the text clarifies what is considered, at what point is the animal considered to be alive.
Right. Right.
And it's because of the blood that's in it.
Right, because
it contains life. So while that blood is circulating,
yes,
it's keeping that animal alive.
Exactly, because Leviticus 17:11 makes it very clear the life of the flesh is blood. But that's true of us too.
Exactly.
Right? And as long as our blood's flowing, we're alive. As long as the blood's flowing with the animal, it's alive. Once the blood ceases flowing, then it's going to be dead, right? And for us, as B'nai Noah, the Torah doesn't specify, God doesn't specify how we kill that animal, only that the animal must be completely dead. Now let's take for granted that we know this is a creation of God, and we should respect that creation and kill it as humanely as possible, because we know that's part of God's creation, just as we're part of God's creation.
We should still have some form of respect.
Absolutely.
That unfortunately in today's day and age,
it's
a lot of slaughterhouses are not
exactly. Now, one last thing I would like to throw out. Some people say, well, people just don't do that anymore. You can go out in some of the western states, and you can have a dish that they refer to as a delicacy. You know what it's called? Mountain oysters. Right? In fact, I've seen people eat them here, right? And say, well, what are mountain oysters?
Bull testicles.
They're testicles that are taken from bulls, or they could be from hogs, right? And they cook them in various ways, and these are some delicacies.
That's probably why those sages in the Tractate Sanhedrin say even castration.
Exactly.
Because that's a living animal.
Exactly. Same
So
thing.
they love a living animal.
See, as long as, and by the way, as long as the animal's alive, you must allow it to fulfill its purpose, right? And his purpose that God created for was to be fruitful and multiply. The moment that